The antique grandfather clock in the opulent foyer chimed midnight, each resonant dong echoing the heavy silence in the room. Rain lashed against the tall windows of Blackwood Manor, mirroring the storm brewing inside. Detective Miles Corbin, his trench coat still damp from the downpour, surveyed the assembled family with a gaze as sharp and unyielding as the sculpted gargoyles on the mantelpiece. "One of you," he stated, his voice a low rumble, "stole the Azure Whisper." The painting, a family heirloom dating back generations, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only an empty, velvet-lined space above the fireplace and a trail of simmering resentment among the Blackwood kin. Miles knew that true value was never in the canvas's worth, but in the shadow it cast on human souls. He felt that shadow thickening in the room, and his old pain seemed to revive, like old wounds aching with a change in weather. Miles's own past, a tapestry woven with threads of betrayal and loss, made him acutely attuned to the subtle shifts in their carefully constructed facades. He'd seen enough broken homes and fractured trusts to know that the most precious things weren't always guarded by locks and alarms, but by the fragile bonds of family. He ran a hand over his neatly trimmed beard, a subconscious gesture that always surfaced when he was on the precipice of a breakthrough. He sensed something more than just a theft hanging in the air. There was a story here, begging to be told. Young Lily, the youngest of the Blackwood grandchildren, clutched a worn teddy bear, her wide, innocent eyes darting between the adults. She was a beacon of purity in the room's suffocating tension, her presence a stark reminder of the innocence that the Azure Whisper represented. It was a painting often described as having the serene calm of a child's dream, seemingly her last memory of happiness. Hours crawled by, each question from Miles met with defensive answers, veiled accusations, and a suffocating web of family secrets. The air grew thick with unspoken resentments and the clinking of ice in half-empty glasses. At one point, he noticed Mr. Henry Blackwood, the son-in-law who always seemed to test the wind, too nervously rubbing his wedding ring, and Miss Evelyn, a niece who dreamed of inheritance, often glanced at the empty space above the fireplace, a hint of triumph in her eyes. Just as Miles felt the case spiraling into an unsolvable enigma, a tremor ran through the stoic matriarch, old Mrs. Blackwood. Her usually ironclad composure crumbled, and a single, unbidden tear traced a path down her wrinkled cheek. "There's something you don't know, Detective," she whispered, her voice a fragile reed against the storm. Her gaze, filled with a sorrow Miles recognized all too well, landed on Lily, then flickered away as if the truth was too painful to bear in the child's presence. "A son, a bastard son. John, he went to jail 20 years ago. No one speaks of him. No one remembers." The confession hung in the air like a phantom limb suddenly revealed on the family tree. A son, ostracized, erased from their history. Miles felt a jolt of recognition, a familiar ache in his own soul. He knew what it felt like to be forgotten, to be a ghost in the lives of those who should have loved him. This wasn't just about a stolen painting anymore. It was about a stolen life. Lily, sensing the shift, squeezed her teddy bear tighter, her small face clouded with wisdom beyond her years. Miles knelt, his gaze meeting hers. "Sometimes, little one," he murmured, "the truth is the hardest thing to find, but it's always worth looking for." He saw a flicker of understanding in her innocent eyes, a shared secret between them. The investigation took an abrupt and darker turn. Miles delved into old prison records, a forgotten world of mugshots and faded paperwork. He found John Blackwood's file, a petty theft charge exacerbated by a history of emotional instability and a profound sense of abandonment. The mugshot revealed a younger man, eyes brimming with a pain that mirrored Miles's own youthful despair. John had been released 2 years prior, a ghost returned to a world that didn't want him. He found John living in a dilapidated apartment on the outskirts of the city, a place as forgotten as its occupant. The air inside was heavy with the scent of old paper and stale coffee. He was a shadow of the man in the photo, his face etched with a lifetime of solitude. He worked odd jobs, mostly under the table, living a meager existence, his only companion, a stray cat he had named Shadow. Miles didn't approach him with accusations, but with a quiet understanding. He spoke of family, of the weight of secrets, of the enduring echo of a past that refused to stay buried. He spoke of his own brother, lost to the streets, a past he rarely shared. John, initially guarded, slowly began to thaw, like ice under a hesitant sun. He spoke of his mother's coldness, his father's refusal to acknowledge him, and the gnawing loneliness that had consumed his youth. He confessed to returning to Blackwood Manor, not to steal the painting, but to simply look at it one last time. It was the only thing from his childhood that had ever truly brought him comfort, a silent witness to moments of fleeting tenderness. He listened, a knot forming in his stomach. He knew John hadn't stolen the painting, not in the way the family believed. But then who had? The conversation took a poignant turn when John mentioned a recurring dream he'd had in prison, a small, secret compartment behind the painting where he and his mother, in a rare moment of tenderness, had hidden a childish drawing of a blue bird, his Azure Whisper. He remembered the feel of her hand warm against his as they tucked it away, a secret between them. Miles returned to Blackwood Manor, the rain having ceased, leaving the world sparkling with renewed clarity. He found Lily in the drawing room, gazing at the empty space above the fireplace. "It's gone, isn't it?" she asked, her voice small, a tear clinging to her eyelash. "Not necessarily, Lily," he said, a sudden spark in his eyes. He gently moved the heavy frame, revealing a small, spring-loaded panel behind where the painting had hung. Inside, nestled among dust motes, was a faded, crayon drawing of a blue bird, and beneath it, a smaller, more delicate painting. It wasn't the Azure Whisper, it was the Azure Promise, a far more exquisite and valuable piece, its existence a secret known only to Mrs. Blackwood and perhaps to John. The real Azure Whisper, the one that had been publicly displayed, was a masterful forgery created decades ago to protect the genuine article. It was the Azure Promise that had truly vanished. But who would steal a painting only they knew existed? The pieces clicked into place, an unexpected twist born from a mother's silent grief. Miles confronted Mrs. Blackwood again, this time with the faded drawing in his hand, its vibrant blue fading with time, yet still holding the essence of a child's hope. She broke down, confessing to the secret of the two paintings, her voice trembling with regret, and then another confession that shattered the remaining illusions. "I took the Azure Promise," she admitted, her voice barely audible, her eyes fixed on the blue bird, "not to sell it, but to give to John, as an apology, as a testament that I did remember him, that I did love him. I tried to leave it for him where he would find it, a way to tell him without words what I couldn't say then." Her grand plan, fueled by guilt and a desperate need for atonement, had gone awry. She intended to leave the true painting for John to find, a silent olive branch, but the unexpected disappearance of the forged Azure Whisper had thrown everything into chaos. The discovery of the forgery and the public outcry had forced her hand. The climax arrived not with a bang, but with a quiet, devastating truth. The theft of the forged painting was quickly traced to a disgruntled different cousin seeking revenge for a perceived slight in the will, Mr. Henry Blackwood, whose nervous habit with his ring had been a subtle tell. He had hoped to expose the family's secret and embarrass them, But the emotional core of the case lay in Mrs. Blackwood's desperate act of love and John's agonizing journey through a lifetime of loneliness. Miles arranged for John to visit Blackwood Manor. It was a tense reunion, years of unspoken pain hanging heavy in the air, thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. But as Mrs. Blackwood, her eyes now clear of shame, presented John with the azure promise and the faded drawing of the blue bird, a silent understanding passed between mother and son. Tears flowed freely, not of sorrow but of release. Lily, witnessing the raw emotion, stepped forward and took John's hand, her small gesture bridging a chasm of 2 decades, a bridge built of innocence and forgiveness. The painting was returned to the family, the truth of its hidden counterpart revealed, but it was the quiet mending of a broken family that truly resonated.